Hello, and welcome to 100% Real with Ruby. Today, I have Ella, who is known as the Fitness Psych on Instagram, and she speaks to a lot of coaches. So, in that, she has the problems, the issues, the bottlenecks, the struggles of like several thousands of clients, pretty much, because she hears them through the ears of coaches. And she's very passionate about talking about communication in itself. But something that comes to mind when I think communication isn't just about that with other people. It's a lot of the communication with ourselves. And many of the times we don't actually hear what we are saying because we're too busy trying to achieve some end outcome, too busy trying to, well, we see this person doing this. Maybe that's the right way. Or this person says this. Like, we miss our own real sense of why. And in that, we get overwhelmed, we get stressed, we get frustrated, we end up losing the true essence behind why we're doing what we're doing. And then this is where weight loss becomes the sole focus. Or we say we don't have enough discipline, we don't have enough motivation, enough willpower. Maybe you can break apart the truth behind what this motivation really is and why it is the worst thing to start with if you have the wrong mindset about motivation, because motivation in itself is not bad. It's how you see it, which is actually something I learned from you, because motivation is not a solo thing. It lands on a spectrum. And now Ella is going to introduce herself by talking a little bit about her passion in motivation and behavior change.
Hello, thank you for that intro. I really like that. Yeah, that intro. So, absolutely, I did psychology at university, and then I went from there. But my real passion is trying to understand, why do some people seem to be able to change or engage in healthy exercise behaviors and eating behaviors, and then for other people they find it really, really difficult. And that was a question that I found really, really interesting, which leads us to the fitness industry, right? Which is loads of people feeling like exactly what you said. They should be able to do this, they should be able to do that, and then finding it really difficult. And then the natural step from that is thinking, well, what's wrong with me? Why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? And that goes hand in hand, like you said, with that kind of external goal of feeling like you need to change your body and you need to change your weight. So yeah, I guess in terms of motivation, where do you want to begin? It's such a huge topic, but I suppose that one of the biggest barriers for people staying healthy is they'll always say, I don't feel motivated, right? I'm sure you have that with your clients. They'll say, oh, I've lost motivation, or I don't feel motivated.
Yeah. And in that comes, I always fell off track.
Yeah. And so there's this connection between like needing to be motivated and how they're perceiving what that means to be motivated and actually doing the actions. There's like this, it's all tied up into feeling. So when I'm feeling good and when I'm feeling ready and on it, I'm going to do the actions that it takes. And not just the actions, I'm going to go above and beyond because I'm so motivated. I'm going to go to the gym 5 times this week. I'm going to cut out all sorts of food because I'm feeling really motivated. And then what happens is that motivation naturally recedes, as it does for everybody. And then because we haven't quite yet built up a relationship with these behaviors, and we've combined them with the feeling, as that feeling recedes, it can be challenging to do those behaviors. And that's why a lot of people see this kind of on-off mindset, yo-yoing cycles. You can stick to it for 3 weeks and then it gets tricky. And as we know, if we want to make change, we've got to have some sort of consistent effort over a long period of time.
Yeah. And I guess what feeds into this motivation is, I know what I should be doing, but I'm not doing it. I can't get the motivation to do this very thing, which you brought this up perfectly. But if it's the right thing to do, you should be doing it. And if if motivation was the real thing in a sense, then why is it that we can't motivate ourselves to do something quote unquote simple enough to move forward? And that's because we usually don't make it simple enough to move. We don't question, like, maybe that's something you can break apart as well, in that why is it so difficult for us to get the motivation to do that one thing when there are two sides of the spectrum? We probably need to listen to ourselves to rest sometimes, and we've been burning ourselves out trying to push ourselves, but in the wrong direction. We haven't actually stopped to communicate with ourselves properly. And what is it that I actually want? Is this the right path that I'm on, or am I trying to force a faulty system to work harder? which you can't just fix a faulty system unless you break apart the hardware to see what is the actual problem. And therein lies a great segue for you in what is the actual problem? What is the right question to ask here?
Yeah. So when you're saying like something should be so simple, why do we find it hard to do something that's so simple that should be what we want? And that's because it's not just about the small action. Like it's not just, right, I need to go to the gym, or this tiny thing, I need to go walk around the block to get some steps in. It's what that thing means. It's what that thing represents. And that's what's keeping us stuck. So for example, it's me going outside for a walk is me finally showing myself that I'm really going to commit to this journey. So it's big, it's scary. There's a lot of psychological stuff tied up into that behavior. And that's what's hard, not the actual walking. That's quite easy. It's what that walking represents, what that walking means, and what that walking might lead to after that. That can be quite challenging. And like what you said, if it's a small behavior, I don't know, let's plan your meals in advance. It might be a small thing on a Sunday evening, just spend 5 minutes planning your meals. Well, the reason why people can't get the motivation to do that is that that thing is not inherently motivating. Like that, unless that thing is of value to that person, they're going to find it very hard to be motivated to do that thing. So it has to be tied to what they actually want. If they can see that that's really tied to them eating the way they want, which is really tied to the way they look and feel, then that may work. But as you're alluding to as well, motivation isn't the only thing. It's very, very helpful. We have to have some motivation to some extent to actually do anything. But there are other reasons why we behave. We behave because we believe that it's going to get us to where we want to. We behave because it makes us feel good about ourselves, because it helps other people, because it moves us towards a life that's important. And so, yeah, motivation is one factor, but there are many factors.
And I guess it's not just what that thing brings, but what the absence of that thing means in terms of, okay, you're not going to plan your meals. You're not going to set time aside to this. You're going to end up feeling overwhelmed. You're going to have too many things on your to-do list. You're not going to be able to discern what is the actual main priority here that leads to everything else going really well. Because yes, you can prioritize all these other things, but essentially you'll get nowhere really far. And then you'll wonder why you're back at Monday, wondering why there's nothing in the fridge. You have all these different things in the pantry that don't actually constitute a meal that serves you. So now you're left with Uber Eats, drive through, or you're just snacking, you binge eat this, you buy something on the way home. Then what's the trade-off? Because everything is essentially a trade-off, because everything you're saying no to means that you're saying yes to all these other minor things that aren't really moving you closer. Whereas I guess that's where you said it's the scary thing of commitment, because when you say yes to that one thing, now all of a sudden you're saying no to maybe the crisps, the chocolate, because many of us also, like you love talking about, fall into this dichotomous viewpoint of it's all or nothing. To be healthy, we need to eat like some immaculate goddess that rubs her body with coffee scrub, organic this, organic that. It's this misconception of what it actually takes.
Mm-hmm. This, it's driven by perfectionism, which underneath perfectionism is fear, because what perfectionism is saying is that I need to be perfect. I have to be perfect in order to make progress, or I have to be perfect in order to be good enough, or for it to be okay. And so to be perfect means I have to do all of these extra things. And if I don't do it, there's no point. And that comes from a place of fear, a fear of putting the effort in and not making any progress, a fear of doing stuff and it not being enough and you staying where you are, which might be a place where you're not happy, right? So this perfectionism is like a protective mechanism. It's telling you that you've got to do all of these things to keep you going in the right direction. But what we know is when we have this mentality, this all mentality, it actually is the thing that's keeping us stuck. Because if you believe that you've got to be perfect to make progress, you're setting yourself up for failure, because nobody can be perfect. And then when you inevitably fall short of those unrealistic expectations, you're then frozen and stuck and are in that nothing mode. And so if we can understand that actually it's not the fact that you had some crisps that's the problem, it's not the fact that you missed a workout that's the problem, but the real challenge is the mindset that you have to be perfect to make progress. That is the real barrier. And if we can become more comfortable and realize that we can make progress being imperfect, being a human that has flaws, that sets us free really to just make some consistent smaller progress.
I think, actually, I know the hugest part of our journey that this shows itself up in is in our diet, in our nutrition. And I can't relate to it now, because here's the thing, I've been doing it for 6, 7 years, But I know that when I started, I had the same issues. And I feel like a lot of people on social media are speaking about where they are now, not where they were before. And many of the times we failed to get to where we are now. And so many people are scared to do that failing process. Whereas, okay, cool. Failing to me 7 years ago didn't have such dire consequences to probably if I was just starting now, or someone that has 10 more kilos on them with like a more desperate need to change. We feel like, okay, I can't risk anything right now. But then being neurodivergent yourself, and I do have a couple of neurodivergent clients, which I'm kind of grateful that it was in a time where I had more space to allocate to this, because now the struggles that I'm personally having as a neurodivergent have nothing to do with the food and the exercise in the same way. It's the other things with managing my life. But people sometimes, like, not just neurodivergence, they struggle to do that with their own food. But outside of the neurodivergency, which, sorry, I'm throwing divergent topics to you, but all converging to the same thing. Then there are those that are struggling to, I guess, this is kind of probably where coaches, quote unquote, can throw out meal plans and give someone some sort of structure. But then on the opposite end, it's just like try to make it up as you go and figure out a meal plan. But then we do that with ourselves, where it's either let's just figure it out as we go, or let's just have a strict meal plan instead of figuring out, okay, what's the better option? Where can I fall in the spectrum of having this perfectly structured meal plan that I follow every single day to having absolutely nothing to go off on the other spectrum? But if you don't intentionally, everything is about intentionality. If you don't intentionally make a choice and then another choice, because everything you do is a series of choices, whether or not you engage in the choice or the choice is made for you because you didn't make a choice yourself, you are choosing to go through the fast food lane and feel like shit because you didn't make the choice earlier on to prep something. So regardless of whether the choice is yours or not, those are your choices because you didn't make a choice, and not making a choice is a choice. That aside, now falling on the spectrum, how can we put together this all or nothing, this perfectionism, this motivation, all these different elements to create some sort of momentum forwards where we're not on either side of that spectrum and not falling off track every weekend, or on a Wednesday anticipating the weekend, then as soon as it's a Friday, it's like, oh, fuck, it's the weekend anyway. I'm just going to have to start again on Monday.
Okay, there's a lot in there, right? So what you're speaking to a bit there is our desire for certainty. So what we really struggle with as humans is a lack of certainty. So that middle zone is so uncertain. Like, oh, what do you mean that sometimes I will have a bit of a structure and other times I might be a bit flexible? That's really uncertain. That's really scary as a human. And so what we'll tend to do is switch to binary thinking, which is, okay, well, I can't tolerate this uncertainty. So what's better is that I either have a strict plan, then at least I know, and that's set and I can just do that, or that doesn't work and I'll go the other way where I just do what I want, because at least then we have a solid outcome and we understand, right? And so we struggle with this uncertainty. And so I think the answer, or the mindset that ties all of these things together, is flexibility. It's the ability to respond moment to moment with what is going on and be able to show up and be able to behave flexibly. That is the challenge. The reason why I'm not assuming, I know the reason why you said that you've tried this in the past, but now it's been years and this is your lifestyle now, it's because you're flexible now. It's that now, if you can't make a gym session, whilst you will be disappointed, you're able to be flexible. That if you can't go in the morning, maybe you'll try and shift it around in the evening. Or if there are some machines taken in the gym, you're going to be able to be flexible and move around it. You know, if you really wanted a high protein meal, but you've gone to the store and your favorite thing is gone, you can be a bit flexible. And so flexibility is the heart of it, which comes from the ability to tolerate uncertainty, to tolerate to change, to tolerate the fact that you're not going to be perfect all the time, and accepting that good enough is good enough. And I think people who are healthy, quote unquote, whatever that even means, or who engage in regular, movement or healthy eating behaviors, is because they can be flexible, or they might be a bit too intense. But yeah, anyways.
I guess that's also where social media can be confusing, because a lot of people are preaching this flexible approach, but that approach might not, for a lot of people, work for you at the beginning, because you've been flexible your whole life. You've been all over the place your whole life. You need to actually bring in some structure. And stay with that structure, deal with the trade-offs of having such structure to be able to develop the confidence, the competence. And something I wanted to talk about later, but we will actually bring it in now, is building up that confidence bucket, finding proof, our track record that we can do the things, because I never had any sort of flexibility in the past. I was so much more strict on myself, but in doing that, it was able to pull me away from the identity that I was. But I learned that flexibility in itself. And I think this, I don't know whether you read Master of Change by Brad Stulberg, but he brings in this concept of rugged flexibility versus just plain old flexibility, where you don't have the banks of a river to keep you into a steady flow of a river, versus being water all over the place and creating a flood of disastrous,
Yeah,
aimless
so
wandering.
that's actually a really good point, right? So when I talk about flexibility, we're talking about psychological flexibility, not necessarily flexibility in terms of diet. And the really important point there is it's confined. So it's within the constraints of the thing that's now meaningful to you. And so what you're doing is you're being flexible, but within the realm of, but I still am a healthy person. And so flexible might be, okay, I don't have the optimum chicken breast, but I'm still having this other option that is within also the constraints of me being a healthy person, not just flexible of like anything at any time. That's not necessarily what flexibility would mean. Like you said, like there are constraints there. And then to the point of confidence building, you're right. Like one of the biggest parts of confidence building comes from getting evidence. And sometimes people don't have the evidence, or the evidence is actually that they can't do it because they have tried in the past and they have seen lots and lots of losses. And so it's hard to have any confidence. And so really there's no way through this but to have to face up to this and have to move forward. So what you would do is you would take something and make it as absolutely easy as possible, and you would just demonstrate to yourself over a period of time that you can do this really small thing, and that's what builds confidence. So rather than saying, okay, I'm going to be in a deficit every single day and I'm going to eat no junk food, you might start really small of like, I'm going to add an extra portion of vegetables each day. And so you do that, and over 2 weeks, you feel successful. You feel really confident that you can do that. And then you would pile on the next behavior and then the next one. And then you can slowly build confidence that way.
Can we talk about the things that stand in the way of doing such, like having too many decisions and leading to decision fatigue, a lack of clarity that we give ourselves because we leave ourselves too many options?
Yeah, so you like the idea of constraints. I can tell that you work well with constraints, cutting out options, which helps you to focus more, right? And that is a good way of reducing overwhelm and decision fatigue. I think the two key things about behavior change, and not many people in the fitness industry recognize this very much, is that there is the cognitive component, which is the intentionality, the rational side of your brain, having to think things through, planning, and that's important. But you also have the automatic side, and a lot of our behavior is driven automatically through habit, through association. And so actually a very good way of reducing decision fatigue isn't necessarily to make a decision at the start of the week and to plan. That's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is curating your environment so that you have less decisions to make, so that actually you're not having to constantly decide, oh my God, am I going to have a takeaway or this, or am I going to, and actually your environment has set you up for success. So there's no snacks in the cupboard, or the vegetables in your fridge are already pre-chopped, or your shoes are already by the door, or you have a class booked in that takes the decision away from you. So the more structures that we can put in place around us that removes decisions can also be as effective, if not more effective, than having to make a decision to not make decisions.
You actually brought an old post to memory, in that it's not just about habit stacking. It's not just about habits, because habits are meaningless if you're going to keep defaulting to your system default, which you haven't designed. It's the you that you used to be, and that you that you used to be is a you that you do not want to continue to be, because otherwise you wouldn't be doing this process of change. And this is where environment isn't just our physical environment either. There's a lot of, like, it's not even just our social environment these days. Like, our main source of our environment, well, not really, because we are in our environments, but it's our freaking phones. Like, we're on our phones all the time. We're on Facebook all the time, Facebook groups. Like, we become what we believe the most, but we believe what we see the most. And most of what we see, if you look at the targeted ads on your Facebook, the targeted ads on your Instagram, it's everything that you are personally searching for. So we think, oh my God, this is meant to be, the heavens are sending me all these signs. No, your user database is sending you those signs. So it's making you believe things that are just a construct of your own thinking. Like, that's how good the meta universe is. So maybe you can give us some practical takeaways for constructing our environment, especially for those just trying to get started on this journey to creating better nutrition habits, as an example.
Great. So this is where some intentionality is actually really good. And it's a good use of your energy here. So let's say there are 4 environments, right? You've got your physical environment in terms of like your home, your immediate space. That's like an environment. You have your phone environment. So that is an environment because we spend so much time on it. And then you have like your environment, which I'm pointing to your brain. That's an environment within your head. You probably experience very similar thoughts that go round and round, and you have different thoughts when you are behaving one way to when you're behaving a different way. So that's an environment that you can get stuck in. And then you have things like your social environment or the actual town that you live in, which will definitely impact upon your health behaviors. And so what we want to do is we want to like take the areas that we have the most control, our own house, the phone. That's a really good place to start. And so practical tips would be, okay, if you want to prioritize eating healthier or having more whole foods or eating more fruit and veg, then that stuff needs to be seen. You have to be able to see it. It has to be quick and easy. It has to be convenient, because like you said, we are going to default to our defaults if we don't have a different option that is frictionless. If we have to, I've got to cut the vegetables now and I've got to prepare the meal. If we are having massive cravings and we're stressed, we're just not going to do it because there's too much friction and we're just going to do our default. And so in our physical environment, in our house, can we make sure that, fruit's on the side, stuff's easy to grab, vegetables are chopped up, meals, maybe there is one in advance, or there's a frozen meal that's got good nutritional quality that's ready for us if we are super tired. We have 3 meals that we just make. Maybe it's something that's so simple like, a microwavable rice plus chickpeas or whatever it is, because we have it ready to go. So if we're feeling overwhelmed, we have these 3 meals. That's some things you can do in your house environment. Then in terms of your phone environment, like you said, realizing that everything is through an algorithm, so you can create what it is that you want to see. And actually, what's probably more helpful is to have less information. So rather than being like, I'm going to create my Instagram so I see fitness models, it's probably best to just spend less time on Instagram, because it's more noise that's going to be difficult when you've already got a lot of noise going on. Also, you can't change your town and stuff like that, but being aware that when you walk down the street and you can smell how delicious things smell, you're going to have to make a decision then to not eat it. And so there are things that you could probably do to help with that. But yeah, we'll start with that because that's a lot of information at once.
I loved every single part of it, and it's very well needed in that this is exactly where having some constraints fits into everything that you do. Like, do what you enjoy and you'll be able to do it. But it's like, you're not going to enjoy it to start with because it's so different from what you've been doing. Like, who goes from eating friggin' like pizza every night, as an extreme example, to enjoying to try to start eating healthier? Or who goes from a completely sedentary lifestyle to having to put in some form of exercise? Like, you're going to have to do things that you do not enjoy to get to where you want to be a lot of the time. Like, some of us just will not enjoy exercise for a long period of time. And it's not just about finding exercise you enjoy, because sometimes we won't enjoy anything for a while. Sometimes we need to put ourselves through different things to even figure out what we enjoy doing. And you're not going to figure that out in a month of trying it. Like, you need to give it a fair go. And I say that because I'm someone who used to get my mom to write me notes that I was injured every single PE lesson because I hated sport. And I still hated it, to the point where even though I wanted to change my body, I did not want to go into a gym or do anything for it. But at the same time, I thought that people go to a gym to lose weight. And I had different intentions where I just wanted to change my body outside of wanting to lose weight. So I'm like, I'm not made for the gym. Or I tried and then I hate it. I love it for a week and then I hate it. But it's like, sometimes you just need to get yourself consistent with doing something regardless. But how can we break that barrier when, like you said, it's not just let's go to Pilates, not just let's go to the gym. There are all of these different components. Like, I need to schedule it into my calendar, because something's always going to pop up if it's not scheduled in your calendar, because if it's not in your calendar, you're not going to do it. So maybe that, and bringing in that whole system of trade-offs, because like you said, everything does serve you in a way. And if we're not thinking about the trade-offs in enough detail with the feelings we're going to feel, what that means for us in the end, then we're always going to go to our default choice.
Okay, so the thing here is that, yes, to some extent, we may have to do things that we don't enjoy. I think that like, we don't have to necessarily love a new thing that we're trying. That really, really helps. Some people, as you'll know, will just try a Zumba class or whatever and love it, and then they're hooked, and that's really, really simple. But you don't have to love it, but you can't hate it. So that's really important. If somebody really dislikes something, then it's not going to work. That's not how behavior reinforcement works. You can't do something that you hate. And another point here is, yes, whilst you're going to have to try things that are a bit challenging, or that you aren't sure of, or a bit uncomfortable, the issue comes when we work with a coach and the coach wants us to do all of this at once. And so it's not possible if we are, for the first time, trying out the gym, we're trying out eating different foods, we're trying increasing our steps, we're now having to track our food, we're using apps, we're now checking in, we are now having to do some emotional work. Like, that is too much. And that's why people can't do it. And it's not because there's anything wrong with them or they don't like to do difficult things. It's because we need a level of stability, and we need a level of security, trust, rapport, support, in order for us to be willing to try things that are a bit uncomfortable. And so this is where the coaching relationship is key. If you build a solid relationship with your client or your coach and you really trust that person, then you will be a little bit more willing when they say, hey, maybe you might want to try a squat for the first time in the gym. And because there's safety and you're not overwhelmed in every single other area of your life, you have almost the mental capacity to take on something that is difficult. The issue this is linked to is actually people are in general very overwhelmed in life. And so they start on this process, they are super stressed, they're super busy, they've got kids, they've got this going on, and then they are starting something and it's too difficult. Even if we don't perceive it to be difficult, we think it's easy getting in your steps. For them, because they're in a period of massive overwhelm, it is too difficult. And so we have to realize, this is the tricky thing, is that it's going to take so much longer than somebody thinks, because you have to start with far less than what you would think. You have to change a small little behavior at a time.
That last bit, start off with way less than you think. And I was going to say, it's not the coaches that typically do this. Well, it's not mostly the coaches that typically do this. We tend to do it to ourselves and thinking that we should be able to manage all of these different things. And I know, because many of the times I would try to slow my clients down, as an example, and they still want to try to do all these different things. No, I want to make sure that I go to the gym regardless. No, I feel good when I'm lifting weights. When you haven't even been to the gym consistently for a week, it's like, no, let's filter this in slowly. And I have a very successful client that I would bring up with this as well, in that we just focused on getting her eating more veggies, more water, more steps. And then we focused on more protein. And I had gym days on her plan, but I never focused on it. But now all of a sudden she's going to the gym as well. Like, she's actually showing up for that. But I'm not really rewarding that because that's not in the focus. But she's still continuing to do it. And I will start rewarding it here and there. Like, sometimes I'll point up on things like saying, I'm really proud that you're consistent and you're actually pushing yourself in the gym. I don't care what she does and doesn't do on the plan. It's the fact she's showing up, because that's not the thing that's in focus right now. And that's something you should do for yourself. Because if you feel like you should be doing all of these different things, or you did have a coach in the past that expected you to do all of this stuff, maybe you succeeded with it before because it was the first time trying. Usually when it's your first time trying, you have all the motivation and ambition in the world. And then you do it, and then you fall off it, or you gain the weight back, and then you do it all again, and then you're back to the start. But over each time, you lose that drive, you lose that effort level, you lose your willingness to keep doing that same thing, because you don't have any proof of concept, quote unquote. And
yeah,
I'll let you take it from there, because you can.
Well, yeah. And so this is why I said right at the start, a lot of this comes from a place of perfectionism or fear. Why don't clients just say, okay, I will just try this week or the next 2 weeks to just add veggies? Why? Because they're scared that if they do that, they're not going to make enough progress, and they're scared that they're going to be stuck in the life that they are. Right? And so that's the problem. And so that's what's driving it, is fear. And so over time, what people can learn to understand is it's the fear that's creating the issue, not the behavior. And so it's their fear that is leading them to not just do the basic steps, because they're too good for the basic steps. The basic steps aren't enough to move the needle, right? It's that fear that's talking to them in that way. It's the fear that's demanding that they reach a high level of performance. And it's therefore the fear that's blocking them from just making small steps, that if you zoom out over 6 months, a person who starts off with just veggies, then adds a little bit of protein, then maybe does some steps, then maybe gets to the gym, over 6 months, that person is going to have slow and steady progress versus the person 5 workouts this week, none next week, none the next week, 5 workouts. Like that's going to be up and down, right? So fear. And so what's fear? It's an emotion. And so at the heart of this, a lot of these challenges can be boiled down to emotional regulation. And so that's why it's less about like I said, it's I think it's less about the cognitive part of planning and doing this and doing that. It's more about how well we can tolerate uncomfortable emotions. And if people are willing to tolerate uncomfortable emotions, then they're going to find it that they are going to be able to make more progress. So uncomfortable emotions could be anxiety, shame, guilt, embarrassment, fear. You know, you step on the scale weight hasn't moved. How do you feel? Anxious, nervous. What does that make some people do? If they can't tolerate that feeling, it will lead to them over restricting or quitting with the coach or giving up. If somebody can tolerate, I've stepped on the scale and I feel really guilt. I feel really scared that I haven't moved again. And I'm fearful that I'm never going to change. Okay, how can I lean into that? I'm going to speak to my coach. You know, I'm feeling really fearful. I'm worried. And then seeking that reassurance, receiving the reassurance and saying, okay, I get it. Part of the process, going to continue as normal, right? So that ability to regulate those uncomfortable thoughts and feelings, so hard, but super essential.
That fear that you're never going to change is such a big part here as well. But there's also the fact that a lot of us don't know what emotions we're feeling. So it just, I guess this just comes up in stress as a bucket or overwhelm as a bucket, or it kind of comes to this being self-critical. And maybe you can speak to how this self-criticism can not only hold you back, but it can lead to you doing more devastating actions, because it's the worst poison of the two. Because, okay, cool, you might have slipped up a little, or there's this uncomfortable emotion that you can't deal with. You're getting hard on yourself about it. That's just making you feel worse about it. I should be already here. I should be already there. But I think if you bring into this as well, one of the biggest fears, as you said, is what if I'm never going to change? What if I'm not meant for this? What if I keep falling off? And I had this conversation with one of my girls where she only literally just went into a deficit. And that weekend, she was like, I'm hungry. I'm already struggling. And you shouldn't already struggle at the start of a proper smart deficit. But when you dig into it, it's because all of the previous times she's attempted a deficit before, it was extreme restriction. It was keto. It was losing weight really fast. It led to her having, I guess you can speak on it as well because you come across it a lot. There's like all these unattended to emotions, but you haven't yet accepted the fact that you aren't that person you used to be. There has been this period of growth and you're not dieting the same way. But I'm sure you can come up with a million other reasons behind this thing, because I can see you scribbling away. But
I have to. Okay, so let's start right back at self-criticism. We get really, really tied in as coaches, as clients, as people, as humans into true and not true. We get really fixated on this, right? So for example, I didn't go, but I didn't hit all my sessions. And we're really fixated on like true or not true. And I didn't actually make progress this week. So if your critical mind is saying to you, but you didn't do what you said you were going to do, or you haven't made any progress, like that may be true, or it may be untrue, but we're getting so focused on if that's true or not, that we're forgetting that actually what matters is helpful and not helpful. And so with the self-critic, some of what the self-critic might be saying is true, but what we really need to be asking is this helpful or is this not helpful? And as you know, the majority of the time, having a very strong inner critic, because by the way, we all have an inner critic, it's more like your relationship to it and how much you listen to it. You need to ask yourself, is this helpful? This voice that's shaming me and making me feel like I'm not good enough and that I'm not making enough progress, is it helping? Is it making it more likely that I'm going to get up tomorrow and keep on trying? Or is it making it less likely? People say that they are scared of not being self-critical. They will say that if they stop criticizing themselves, that they're going to be really lazy and they're not going to bother. That's not the case. That's not true. Because they haven't they haven't let go of that voice. And part of it is a fear. They're scared of letting go of this criticizing voice. They're scared of Imagine if they treated themselves kindly. Well, if I treat myself kindly, I will just eat whatever I want. And it's like, no, you won't, because that's not what treating yourself kindly is. Treating yourself kindly is kind of how you treat a child. You wouldn't just feed a child any food whenever they want. You would have boundaries. You would nourish the child. You would do what's right for it. And so really it's more about helpful and unhelpful. And the word you use there, should be banished from our vocabulary, because should means that it's compared to some sort of external reality that doesn't actually exist. All that matters is how you actually feel in the moment. So not like, I shouldn't feel like this, I should be making progress. Says who? Right? So it's actually a rigid belief that the world should be the way that we think it should be. Absolutely not. There's nothing that says the world should go as we want it to go. There's nothing that says it should be easy. There's nothing that says that all of these things, right? There is no should. That's made up. But by believing that there's a should, makes us feel like we're falling short and makes us feel like something's wrong, makes us feel frustrated. Whereas if we realize there only is what there is, right? If you want to get deep, there only is what there is, then we get to work with it, right? So either I can say, oh, I really should like the gym, or I should be able to do this. Well, you can't know, right? You can't. So I do feel hungry right now, or I do feel sad right now, or I do feel like I don't want to go to the gym. Okay, that's fine. That's how you actually feel. Let's work with that, rather than when people banish how they actually feel. That's when we have this thing where there's unresolved feelings, because we're constantly banishing our feelings, and then they're popping out in different places because we're never actually allowing ourselves to feel how we actually feel. And like you said, there's that fear that comes from that. And I think the flip side of the coin is that we have to trust. We have to really trust ourselves that we are able to make the right decisions. So it's okay that we feel these things, and we can trust that we're going to be able to behave how we want to when we feel those things.
And I guess this is where building up your standard of proof comes with it. But coming back to it, the most important part is the process, and why process outcomes are much, much more important than outcome focused. Wait, process focused is much more important than outcome focused, because you're never going to build that trust in yourself if you haven't went through the process. It's just like becoming a millionaire, but not really knowing how to save your money, how to spend your money, how to invest your money, and then blowing it out on the Vegas Strip. Like anything like that, or just losing the weight after doing keto, and you never really learned how to live a healthy lifestyle. You just learned how to do quick fixes and weight loss transformations, but you're just a series of weight loss transformations with nothing that sticks, nothing that makes you feel good. And you just end up feeling more and more miserable with yourself, because cool, you have this strand of, I lost this much and this much, and then you show something that's still losing the same weight, but never really feeling, I guess this comes back to, what is the purpose behind all of this? What is the overarching theme of everything we are doing? What, sorry, with that.
So if we use the example of, okay, I want to reach a certain weight, or I want to, be X kind of person, what we're doing is we are treating that outcome as a static thing. And so this is easy. Like if it's in terms of, I want to run a marathon, that is static. That's either you've done it or you haven't done it. But this idea of losing weight or whatever it is, we treat it as a static thing. Losing 10K is an event. It happens. What we don't realize is that it's always a dynamic process. And so you can't lose 10K. What you are is, you are a person that is engaging in behaviors that has led to you losing 10K, right? It's always dynamic. You're always a person in a process that has led to that thing. Whereas what we tend to do when we look at the outcome is we think of the thing, lose 5 pounds, lose weight, as if that's a thing. And so you can be the person that you are now, but get that outcome. Like you can just pluck the outcome out of the air and just have it and purchase it and have it. That's not how it works, right? It's a process. And a person who is healthier is not healthier for any other reason than they engage in healthy behaviors on a day-to-day basis. That's what that is. And so if you want to be a healthy person, the process is that on a day-to-day basis, you engage in healthy behaviors, right? Not all of your behaviors, but just overall, the majority of them are healthy compared to the rest of your behaviors. And so that's it. It's that realization that you're always going to have to some extent, enjoy the process, because it's lifelong. There is no such thing as, okay, I'm going to get healthy, I'm going to get fit. Because what does it mean to be fit? To be fit isn't a state. To be fit is a dynamic process of, I exercise regularly. Otherwise, what will happen is you'll get fit and then you'll stop. And then what will happen the next week? You'll be unfit. Or the week after, you'll be unfit. It's not an end state. It's always a dynamic process. And so that's, again, why we'll go back to why you can't do stuff that you hate, because realistically, you're going to want to do this forever. You might not want to, but in order to maintain or to be that person, you're going to have to be engaging in this for the long run. And so You got to find things that you're going to at least grow to enjoy. And enjoyment, by the way, doesn't have to be, oh, I'm loving this and I'm like filled with joy. It could be that I'm doing this and I'm feeling a sense of purpose, or I'm gaining connections with other people, or I like to see myself improving. There are various different things that can make an experience pleasant. That doesn't just have to be, happiness or fun.
You will always come across resistance, and the resistance or the hard doesn't mean it's bad or something you should avoid. And regardless of whether something you enjoy or not, you're not going to enjoy it all of the time. It's not going to be easy all of the time. In fact, I would argue most of the time it is a hard process, but it's something that you love that hard. You choose that hard for how that hard makes you feel. Like, no matter how long I've been at my fitness journey, it's always going to be a level of hard because I'm pushing myself to improve. But I'm choosing that hard because it's given me so much confidence. I feel strong in myself. It's created a lifestyle that I'm thriving in with more energy. And like, no one can take that confidence away from you. No one can buy that fit body. Yeah, okay, cool. You can buy some boobs, you can buy some ass sometimes, but you can't buy the confidence that comes with that, in that I built this thing. I have the grit. I know that I can push through anything. And besides, you know that you built that ass. You didn't buy that ass. Like, that in itself is a statement. And like, nothing, like, having a fit body, having a healthy fit body is something that you are going to regret not working on, when the only thing you have left is wishing that you had health, because you're in and out of the doctor's office. You neglected your postural work. You neglected your muscles, and now you feel weak when you're walking down the streets, or whatever it is, and you realize, oh my God, I'm getting older now and I'm actually feeling older. Whereas age isn't age, it's a number, and you dictate how you age. And you can do that through choosing series of choices that lead you to the outcome that breeds a healthier version of yourself, because you delayed the gratification. You delayed the instant gratification, the instant wins, the instant dopamine hits. And we haven't really touched on that yet, but I think that's something really important to bring into this, tying into, actually bringing another element to tie into this, because I wanted to mention it before when you were talking about whatever it was, we feel like it letting ourselves go or getting lazy if we have the self-compassion. I just remembered it. But also not focusing so much on the weight loss itself, because weight loss isn't the end goal. The process is the end goal, because the process is life. The end goal isn't really a goal. The end is death, because that's the end of our lives. You don't just get something and then keep it, because if you don't use it, you lose it. And if you haven't learned how to use it in different contexts, on holidays, when life is really busy, when the kids are chaotic, which, hello, when all of this shit is happening, you're going to have the least motivation to do things. Things aren't going to be as enjoyable, because now you're going to have other higher priorities. You need to learn how to juggle those priorities and find your minimum effective dose, because you need to accept that your lifestyle in this season of life is not the same as it was before. It does not mean you're failing. It does not mean, hey, I'm going to quit my coach because I can't give you my 100% anymore. Coaches don't need 100% from you, but you do need to learn with the coach how to navigate those areas if you've never navigated them before. Otherwise, your ship's going to drown on the unnavigated seas, because you don't know how to navigate those seas. And the thing that I wanted to tie in with that is the process of change in itself, and how it isn't just that physical component, but that mental component. Because not focusing so much on your body and your weight does not mean letting yourself go. And there are so many other things in there that I know you can bring in. So I'll hand it over to you.
Okay. All right. So actually, this is why I always end up going a lot deeper when we talk about things, because it is deep. So there's two factors here. If we look at Buddhism, has this idea, acceptance commitment therapy has this idea, and it's the general idea that life is suffering. And so you can believe that if you want or not, but it's the case. So you even said it yourself. It's like it's picking your hard. And that comes from the absolute belief or understanding that life is hard, right? And some people don't even accept that general truth. And that's a real big problem, right? So you're right. Like, life is suffering, life is hard. And so we can't escape that. We're on this earth. This is what it is. And no matter what we do, it's going to be very difficult to some extent, and it's going to be hard. And so the only thing we have, and we don't all have this, but a lot of us have this, is the ability to, like you say, choose the ways in which we suffer, or choose what's hard. And it has to be meaningful to us, because moving your body is meaningful to you. the difficulty feels meaningful. It matters. It means something. Whereas when we're just suffering day to day and there's no meaning to it, it can feel really way more hard than when we suffer for something that has inherent value. So that's the first point. Life is hard. Life is always going to be hard. Yeah, it's the nature of it. And another really important thing you said, this is really profound. It goes back to this idea of that as humans, we like to pretend that we're not dying, right? We like to pretend that we're not a ticking clock. And so, like you said, it's always this idea of when I'm less stressed, when I'm in a better place, when I'm ready. We're not realizing, exactly like you said, that life is now. Life is unfolding right this very minute, right now, right now, right now. It's only ever now. And so that idea of it's always happening. And so it's not waiting for an end goal of X amount of weight. It's what am I doing right now? Is this exactly how I want to be spending my time? Is this the behaviors that I want to be engaging in? That's the kind of stuff. And not always waiting for the right time, because we realize that by waiting, we are literally just allowing life to pass by and never quite truly grasping it or doing with it what we want to be doing with it. And I've just lost my own track there. So I'm going to throw it back to you.
But that is actually the essence of what our journey is all about. And too many of us fall to our default, which is, I guess, not even choosing, letting life put its choices in front of us. Whereas, okay, cool, we're smelling KFC, let's stop for KFC. Or, okay, so what I usually do is give into this habit. I'm usually snacking through the day because we haven't, actually change that topic, because I think this is something really important that you can touch on in this process of change. It's okay, so I just lost my process of thought there too, but we have this like, how am I going to word this? Okay, so we're put into a situation where we have to sort of make a choice to move forward or to stay as we are. Now, social media puts this argument out that you should be an intuitive eater, or that having these restrictions or saying no to this or leaving things out of the house because you can't have things in your environment right now is being obsessive, or tracking is obsessive. It's unhealthy. Social media is forcing their opinions onto you of what you should, bringing in that evil word again, should be doing, what is the right thing to do, what the proper steps are to do, quote unquote, with the proper as well. But it's like, what do you need in this moment right now? Maybe you do need a lot more structure. Maybe you can't have the chocolate in the house. We're made to feel bad for things that we need to essentially move us forward and get our foot in the door, and then to keep it as it is so we can build momentum. Because just because something finally worked and you finally entered the door does not mean you go back to the way things were before, because now, cool, you're in the door. Like, you need to keep moving first, because your gravitational pull back into the old Zortex of you. Zortex, I like that. I was meant to say Vortex, but the old Zortex of you is still stronger than the pull to get you to where you want to be, because you haven't even yet figured out how good it feels to feel good. We feel like we're doing okay. For example, some people say they feel great on 5 hours of sleep. Yeah, well, you don't know what it's like to consistently get 7 or 8 hours of sleep, but to consistently thrive in life, because you've been doing that your whole time. And you could have, for example, been thriving with a lot of sleep, but then you became a mother, and then all of a sudden your new normal is sleeping 4 hours, 5 hours a night. And you think that is doing good because you're making it by recency bias, negativity bias, like all these different biases come into where we are in our journey. That can handle over to you, because we were talking about the process of change, but that just brought good.
Okay, so for this, it's about absolutely creating your own bespoke path, and people won't understand the level of bespoke that we're talking about, right? So everybody else is going to have an opinion of what you should do. Everything, there is no right answer, as much as everybody convinces you there's a right answer, right? No matter what you do, someone out there is going to say it's wrong for some extent. You could be eating only vegetables, someone's going to say that's wrong. You could be eating no vegetables, someone's going to say that's wrong. Like, there is no winning, there is no right way, but the only thing there is the right way for you, right? And this is an absolute commitment to a bespoke approach. But I also think this comes, actually, as I'm thinking about it, from extreme self-trust and self-companionship. So what I mean by that is that's to realize in that moment, hang on a minute, I know that people tell me that I'm supposed to do X, Y, Z, but actually I quite like going for long walks, and that actually feels really good for me. And so what do you have to do there? You have to trust yourself and be your own friend more than any of these other voices. You have to say that you are the most important person in the world that matters, right? And that takes a hell of a lot of self-love to say that, no, actually, this is right for me. I understand that maybe walking up a hill is better. I understand that running might be better. But for me, walking is the best. And the confidence and the courage it takes to do what's right for you, you know? Or, you know, I understand that some people, it would be restrictive to not have snacks in the house. But I have found that for me, that is what I need. And so, like, that level of courage to really do what's right for you and best for you is really, really important. But most of the time, we're not actually listening to ourselves. We're listening to maybe a craving, or we're listening to maybe a transient emotion, but we're not listening truly to what our heart desires, right? Or if you want to be cheesy, or like our intuition or our soul or whatever like that. We're not truly listening to that. And if we do listen to it, we have far too much noise that's then hard to have the courage to follow through with that.
I think because I know that this used to be me, because I never felt like I was normal. I felt like I fucked up everything and I was broken. I used to be like, I just want to be normal again. I just want to eat normal again. Well, reading this book changed my whole perception of change, in that you'll never go back to order, because there is no such thing. As soon as there is a disruption to your way of life, when life disrupts you, which is something I wanted to talk about, when life disrupts you, you're finding a new level of order. Because it's almost like when you melt plastic, you're not going to get that plastic back to the way it was before, but you can create something new out of that plastic. It's
nice.
Yeah,
I like this. This is
like,
kind of like the more we speak, the more I'm thinking that these like mindfulness principles and like Buddhist principles are actually really, really helpful. So I'm thinking that's that concept of grasping. So life is always changing. Life is always unfolding. You might have it sussed for 5 minutes and then you got to move house now, or whatever it is. There's always something, right? And so this concept of the difficulty comes when you're grasping. You're trying to hold on to something for security because we don't like uncertainty. We don't trust people. So, but I was smaller before. I want to get back to the weight I was before. I want to get back to how I felt before. We're grasping. And if we imagine it like a conveyor belt, right? And there are bags on a conveyor belt. The more we're trying to grasp for the bag that has just passed, all the bags we're missing now, and all the life. We are constantly missing life in the moment passing us by and unfolding because we're too busy trying to grasp back of what's already gone. And so this concept of like letting go of grasping, and this idea of you can only be present now. And so this is really helpful. Forgiveness. Okay, I ate the chocolate. I didn't really want to eat that chocolate. Am I going to grasp on that mistake and feel bad? And all the while I'm grasping on that, I'm not realizing that there's a moment right now that I'm here, that I can enjoy life, or that I can make a choice right now, or that I can live right now, because I'm too busy worrying about that, or I'm too busy worrying about the next bit of life that's going to come up next week, right? So this concept of being present, moment to moment, unfolding.
I really love that. Something you touched on before bringing this up as well, which I feel really fits in here, is that you're not listening to yourself. And I kind of introduced this with your love of the mistakes. And I didn't actually mean mistakes then. I meant missed takes. the missed takes and mistakes of communication with ourselves, because we don't even know how to communicate with ourselves, because we're speaking a different language. We're speaking the language of Joe and Sally and Karen from HR and friggin' Bob Van Doo, the keto warrior. But what is it that we need in this moment? How are we feeling? And this is bringing back to the concept of why I ban the scales for at least 6 months in someone's journey, because we don't know how to feel within our bodies. We don't know how we should expect to feel when we wake up, and we don't have a scale dictate how to feel in that morning. We don't know how to go into a session, into training, how to feel in our bodies when we're lifting weights. If the concept of weighing less isn't daunting us, if the concept of shrinking our bodies or training just to shrink our bodies, oh my God, what is this going to show me in a week of being consistent on the scale? I can't wait. Like, we're doing everything for the purpose of one outcome, except to learn how to feel in our bodies. And it's funny because whenever I used to weigh myself and see the scale go down before a deadlift session, I would feel straight away, fuck, I'm going to be so weak today. The scale went down. It's a complete opposite to what people normally feel, but that was always how I thought when I was going into a heavy session. Oh my God, now I'm not going to be able to lift as much. Like, we don't recognize these things until we've stepped away from something for long enough. And
oh my God, yeah.
You can even step away from it for ages and feel the best of your life, and then go back to that tool, emphasizing the word tool, and it still do numbers on your head. But at the same time, like you brought up that whole walk thing, it's like, what is the whole purpose of this anyway? Because maybe that scale doesn't even serve the purpose, which I can assure you it does not serve the purpose at all. Like, you do not need a scale to change how your body functions, how your body looks, how your body feels. What you do need to change are the actions that you take, because you are not someone trying to lose weight. You're someone who is going to create a lifestyle and make the deliberate choices day after day to live a lifestyle that makes you feeling confident, because weight loss really isn't the goal after all. And this kind of brings back to what I wanted to talk about in the foundations are essential to build first.
Yeah, so I'm just going to quickly add to that. What you'll often find is the clients will say things like, but the scale says 86 and I really need to get it to 82. And you're thinking like 86 and 82, these are just such arbitrary numbers that literally don't mean anything. But the issue really is what that number means to the client, because 86, 5, 71 doesn't mean anything in and of itself, just like age, but it has a meaning to the client. So what that probably means is 86 means that I'm overweight and I'm gross and people won't love me and that I'm unfit and people are going to think this about me. That's what that number means. And so we think that if the number actually says 80, that it's going to mean that people don't think this about me and I'm going to be able to accept myself and I'm going to be okay and people are going to think I'm attractive again. And whereas none of that is actually can ever be related to the weight on the scale, because nobody can see that number apart from ourselves, right? So that's another thing to tie into like the meaning. And I love what you're saying as well about this idea of we never actually inhabit ourselves, because like you said, we wake up in the morning, I've got an aura ring, so I woke up, it's telling me how ready I am, it's telling me that I've had a crap sleep, so I'm thinking, oh god, I've got to take it easy today. I don't know how I bloody feel. I've got no idea if I feel ready or not, because this tells me. I then open Instagram, and Instagram will be reminding me that I don't post as much as I should be posting, or I should be building a business, or I should be having a second hustle, or or I should be looking better. And then you go downstairs and you turn on the TV, and then the news is telling you that everybody around you is dying and the world's falling to crap. And then you open up Twitter and everyone's raged. And so you get to 8 a.m. and already you have had this surge of emotion, and not once have I taken a seat and thought, how do I feel? You don't do that. You just go through the life just like wrapped up in everybody else's stuff all the time. And like you said, we never actually inhabit our own body for any length of time to understand ourselves at all. Okay, so why are the foundations important? Well, because they're necessary. You can't build the rest of the stuff without the foundation. And that's like the basic answer, right? Is that if you want to run a marathon, you have to have first known how to run a mile, which requires you to know how to run, which requires you to know how to walk, which requires you to know how to stand, which requires you to know how to crawl. Everything is built upon another skill. And so yeah, you could wake up and just try to run a marathon if you want, but surely the better step is to just take the next step in the journey.
The thing I loved about that part there, which I've never actually took into consideration before, is that the walking and the crawling aren't actual forms of running. They're a slower pace. They're like, you could even say that the crawling, the running, they're completely different modes to a run that you need for a marathon. Yet we feel like if we're not doing things to X standard, we're failing. We're not good enough. We're going to fall behind. Oh no, what about this? What about that? What if we never get there? And that just ties this whole conversation into a loop, which I kind of want to tie with a bow with a huge thing that everything's a huge thing, but this has been highlighted in green on this document that I have for Ella for the duration, and that's compartmentalizing versus catastrophizing, and blending it all together to find the way that directs us forward, because neither compartmentalizing nor catastrophizing really get us anywhere far.
Yeah. So there must be a middle option, which is maybe just seeing things how they actually are. So, so you really want to consistently go to the gym and hit 3 sessions, and I've only made 1 this week. Is it bad? Yes, it may feel bad. It might feel like I've let myself down. That can be true. Is it the worst thing in the world? No. So 2 things can be true at once. It can be that I feel disappointed, but it's also okay. Like, it can coexist. Different feelings can coexist, right? And so it's, again, being able to manage uncertainty, being able to tolerate emotions, being able to sit in that middle space and realize, like, okay, life is always unfolding. There is never going to be a time where every single week I always am perfect and always hit 3 sessions and absolutely no problems and I'm never disappointed in myself. Like, this is part of the process. This is life. Sometimes you're going to do one session, sometimes you're going to do 3, sometimes you're going to do 5, sometimes you're going to do 2, and having that acceptance and okayness within ourselves is it. And it's always realizing that underneath it all, we're always okay. That's the thing. Like, we don't ever sit in ourselves enough to realize that underneath it, we're okay. We're all this emotions coming up. It's like when you shake a snow globe, right? And everything's moving around and we're feeling like it's the end of the world. And if we were to just settle for a second and calm, we'd realize, it's okay. All right. Yeah. This week, maybe I didn't plan as much as I wanted to. That's the reason why I didn't go to the gym as much. That's okay. Nothing about me personally. I'm not an awful person. Next week, I know what I'm going to do. It's okay. Right. And I can also feel disappointed in that, and that'd be fine. I saw something from a coach recently, and it was a client who had weighed themselves, right? And the client had sent the coach like 6 messages within the space of a couple of minutes. Oh my God, the scale's done this, and and you could tell like the franticness and the fear that had come over the client, and just boom, 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 boom. And then the client had sent a message like 15 minutes later. Okay, it's all right. I'm okay now. And I was like, that's exactly it. That's the snow globe. That's the snow globe has been shook, and we haven't just given it a time to just settle for a minute to realize that it's okay. It's all okay. It all passes.
That I like that analogy. I thought of it like a snow globe. And something you said there as well is, I just didn't plan. Like, it's not great to just say, I'm just going to get back on track, or I'm just going to do what I know I need to do, if you don't try to understand what is it that led to that slip in the first place. Because I don't like the whole "a mistake made twice is a choice," because I don't believe that to be true. I feel like one made 3 times is more so a choice, because you might need to make it a second time to realize that, hey, this is a red flag. I need to maybe address this thing. And maybe for some people, it's 3 times. The way it's almost like forming a habit isn't just a 21-day thing. It might be for one person, but for many other people, it might be years upon years. Well, not really years upon years, but it might be months upon months to even get that habit going. And this is why you can't fit yourself into someone else's peg hole. And change is never linear. It's different for everyone. And it's based off your past experiences. They shape not only your process, but your belief in yourself and your beliefs in general.
Yeah. So I guess the way I would round that up then is that we can either take behavior as a reflection on us and our character. I didn't go to the gym. I'm lazy. What's the matter with me? Why am I so useless? Why am I rubbish? Why am I never going to achieve this? Could do that. Not going to be helpful. Or you can see disappointment and not achieving stuff as what it really is, which is just a feedback mechanism. And this whole process is an iteration. So rather than taking it personal, there's something wrong with me, I'm bad, I did something wrong, it's I just didn't plan. Or, okay, I wasn't prepared for the hunger. I see now. Not that I'm greedy. No. I wasn't prepared for the feeling of hunger. Now I see what it's going to take. Okay. And so this is compassion. This is compassion 101 instead of criticism. Rather than criticizing my character and thinking that there's something wrong with me as a person for not being perfect, I'm realizing that, cool, I'm going to be making mistakes on the way. This is part of the process. And so what behavior was it that I could change? That's information. That's okay. It's okay that I didn't do it perfectly. I'm going to change things moving forward.
That's the perfect way to see it, because that way you're not seeing yourself as, I guess you're not seeing yourself as a pass or fail, but exactly that very thing, a being in motion that's going through the things. And that's essential when you're chasing an outcome, because if you're only doing something for an outcome, what happens when you get that outcome? You're not an outcome. You're a series of choices. You're all these different things. And I think that does sum it up really well. So I'll let you sum it up with where people can find you, anything else that you want to plug, anything else that you want to tie this up with, so that people can take away some practical little Ella nuggets of wisdom.
I love that. I've really, really enjoyed this conversation. So thank you for having me. It's always nice to explore those things. Best place to find me is on my Instagram at @thefitnesspsych_. You'll see me on there posting general stuff about behavior change. So yeah, that's the best place to find me. But other than that, it's nothing really necessarily to plug or anything.
I actually highly recommend you pop onto her Instagram and check her out, because the slides that she puts up are as we should really be putting things to ourselves, and they're simple, they're structured, they're the opposite of what we tend to do with the way that we want to move forward in complicating everything. Because as soon as you bring things down to the bare basics, you're able to actually move forward. So highly recommend you check out the Fitness Psych with an underscore. And I hope you enjoyed this conversation. And if you did, give me a 5-star rating, and give Ella a message in her DMs, because I'm sure she'll love to hear from you guys. and tag
Yes.
me if you share us, and just share it with a friend. You don't have to share it to your stories, because I've got a lot of people that said that their friends shared podcasts with them and they were really grateful that they heard that message at that period of time. So do that, help someone out, and you'll hear me on the next podcast.